Welcome back to another video on this channel. This will be a small Q&A, all tennis related questions. I'll probably be doing more of these videos down the line, so if you have got any tennis related questions, please comment below or send them in on Twitter. I will leave the link to my Twitter in the description below. So kicking things off with the tennis question from Fraser's Racket. What are your thoughts on coaching during matches on the WTA? Personally, I'm not a fan. Well, I'm actually with Fraser on this one. I'm not a fan either. I think to become one of the best tennis players in the world and win Grand Slams, I do always believe in natural ability in any sport. I think you have to start playing from an early age and have a natural instinct of how to play the sport, naturally how to play shots, have a natural hunger for the game, a real passion from day one, and you have to want to succeed. You know, if you go into tennis or any sport really and want to become the best, you've got to dedicate your life to it almost. You know, make sacrifices. Maybe join academies from an early age. You know, like Djokovic has moved away from Serbia at an early age. And there's been many examples of that in many different sports. You know, moving to different sides of the world as kids to practice in, you know, usually America or European countries to join these academies. And I do think you have to do that. But you know, physically you have to be in fantastic shape to be successful at any top level of any sport, particularly tennis. We know the fitness regimes that they go through, and you know the 5-set matches for the men's and the 3-set thrillers for women's. You have to be incredibly fit to win Grand Slams. You know, you're winning seven matches at the very highest level. But also mentally is a huge thing. I mean, we've seen players in the past that, you know, don't quite have that mental stability at the end of matches to get over the line, and the likes of Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams, obviously Halep recently's got over the line and look where it's in her confidence. Stan Wawrinka is another one that can, you know, really produce his best tennis at the biggest stage of the tournament. Stan's fantastic mentally. Andy Murray eventually won his long-awaited Wimbledon, then followed it up a couple of years later with another one. Just almost took the pressure off him. So I think in-play coaching's I'm just not a fan of it, to be honest. I think to be a champion, you have to, you know, be mentally strong and be able to come back from sets down. I don't see why we should start introducing coaching during matches. You know, as tennis is an individual sport, and I think it would bring a more level playing field, which, you know, you could argue is a good thing. But then, you know, if Djokovic, and just using Djokovic as an example, if he's capable of problem solving better than another player, then I don't see why he should get an advantage of having a coach on their side. You know, it's problem solving is a huge thing in tennis. You know, you've got to be able to adapt, you know, change the momentum of matches, and I just think you should do it on your own. You know, at the end of the day, if it's an individual sport, and if certain players are better mentally than others, then that's just how it is. You know, you will improve through experience. You know, young players naturally do struggle mentally on the big stages. You know, they get nervous and at these big arenas. Obviously, Sasha Zverev was culprit of that, certainly the early part of his career, but he is getting better and better as we've seen. He's run at the Australian Open. Mentally he's becoming a lot stronger, and I think that's, you know, brilliant to see. It's almost, he's a perfect example of why you don't need in-play coach. You know, it's all just about experience and learning how to produce your best on the bigger stages, and Zverev's living proof of that. You can do it. I just don't see why an individual sport should get turned into all of a sudden, you know, oh, I'm in a crisis point, what do I do? Oh, I ask me coach. I don't see the point in that. I think if you can't work it out yourself, you're not going to be a champion. It's a brutal sport at the end of the day, but to be the best, you have to prove to be the best, and you have to be mentally and physically perfect. So that first answer went on for 4 minutes. I'm going to have to quicken them up if I'm going to get through these questions in less than a day. Another question from Fraser's Ratted. Who do you think will win a major first beside the big three? I'm praying that team will get his act together, but he's come short so often. I'm hoping team to win the Roland Garros. I think naturally, if you do look at outside the big three, who's going to win a Grand Slam next, I'm assuming he doesn't include Murray and Wawrinka in that because they've already won one. But I think you do have to look at Dominic Thiem, don't you? I think Thiem would have won the French Open had he not met Rafa Nadal twice. I mean, he's met the greatest clay court player ever in his 2 finals, which is unfortunate. In his hardcore tennis, he's obviously met Djokovic in Australia, which is, you know, again an near enough impossible task. But Thiem's improved his game so much, I feel, over the last 18 months away from clay court, and if he can get that level of consistency in his game and get that real hunger and desire, which I do feel he's got, then I do think Thiem can win a Grand Slam, and he's probably the most likely of the players outside the big three. In terms of NxtGen, I guess you've got to look at Tsitsipas and Zverev, and I mean Zverev for me, I always thought, he was one of the most naturally gifted players outside the top three, and a couple of years ago he was on everybody's lips, wasn't he? It was a matter of time, when is he going to win a Grand Slam rather than if. His career did sort of go down the pan over the last couple of years, but he's bounced back. He looked mentally fantastic at the Australian Open. I just hope it's a sign of things to come for Sasha. But if I was to answer that question outright, it would be Dominic Thiem, and I agree with Fraser on that one. Other questions from Dimitris. Which NxtGen are going to make a better clay court season? This one was quite easy for me. I think Tsitsipas is outstanding on clay. He had a brilliant season last season. He'd had a disappointing time at the Australian Open, losing, it was at the third or fourth round. I think he'd be looking to have a big French Open and really make his mark at Roland Garros. So for me, Tsitsipas will have a very good clay court season, but obviously I will be covering the French Open. I'll have a look close at the tournament. I know Munar is a very, very good clay court player. I think he's one of Rafa's protege. Spanish, very quick around the court, great clay court player. So maybe he's one to watch. But yeah, as I say, I will be previewing the French Open near the time, and I'll have a look at which players could spring surprises. Do you believe that Rafa will claim his 13th Roland Garros title, and how important is the number of Grand Slams? How important is that Grand Slam for the GOAT discussion? Answering the first part of the question, I'll probably make a prediction for the Roland Garros closer to the tournament. A lot depends on, I feel, how they get on in the clay court tournaments leading up. I think if Djokovic can get a mental edge over Rafa and beat him, yes, it's over 3 sets, but I think if Djokovic can go into that Roland Garros unbeaten, then I wouldn't be batting against him. But if Rafa beats Djokovic a couple of times on clay, shows he's at 100% fitness and shows that he's still on top of Djokovic on clay, then I would have to go with Rafa. Speaking from an early point of view, I mean, you can't really bet against him. He's won more 12 French Open titles. He's got to be massive favourite to win it again. He's playing outstanding this year. He's just won in Acapulco. He had a brilliant run at the Australian Open. He won the US Open last year. So yeah, Rafa's in the form of his life. He's not going to the tournament with any injury worries yet. But then on the other hand, you've got Dominic Thiem, who's just had a fantastic run at the Australian Open. He's at his home on French Open. It could be third time lucky. He could eventually get one over Rafa. Djokovic, never write him off, can you? On clay, on any surface. He's 18-0 this year. He was joking about going unbeaten, but would it be a major shock to see him go unbeaten? Not for me personally. So yeah, it's promising to be a fantastic French Open. The one thing I do like about Roland Garros is that I can throw up surprises. Some players just find it incredibly difficult to play on that surface. Djokovic last year, and then horrific conditions when the wind was blowing a gale in his face, and although it's not fantastic tennis to watch almost, it is a good chance for the NxtGen players and other players to come through, and on a very difficult surface, if you're at home on that surface, and it does level out the playing field, and I think it is quite an open tournament if you take Rafa out of it. In terms of for the GOAT discussion, I think it is massively important that Rafa does it. Does win it, obviously levels with Federer on 20 Grand Slams if he wins it. If Djokovic was to win it, he obviously goes to 18, and then ahead of Wimbledon in the US, which you'd be favoured for. You could see Djokovic go level with Federer this year, or certainly level with Rafa. And I think for Rafa to become the most successful player, he has to win the next 2 or 3, 4 French Opens, because Rafa's not at home at Wimbledon. He did win the US Open last year, but he hasn't won many hardcore titles over the past few years. I think he's massively reliant on winning the French to keep opening up that gap on Djokovic and closing in on Federer. So I think it is massive that Rafa does win this one, and he probably will. And last one for Dimitris was your favourite WTA player. This changes quite a lot for me. I love watching the women's tennis. I don't have like a massive favourite player like I do Djokovic. If I had to name my favourite players, it would probably be Simona Halep. When Halep couldn't win a Grand Slam, she kept reaching semis and finals, and it was one like she was always the underdog, but you always wanted her to do it. And when she eventually won a maiden Grand Slam title, it was just fantastic. And it's obviously ever since I've just sort of rooted for Halep. I just think she's a massive advocate for tennis, and a brilliant advocate for our sport. Like if someone asked me, I've never watched tennis before, can you get your words out? Name one player that I should watch. That sums up tennis like in one player. I would name Simona Halep. Like the way she just fights for every ball, the passion she shows on court, the emotion, the shot variety, and I just think she's an incredible player to watch. A little powerhouse. As I say, she gets every ball back in court. She's brilliant forehand and backhand. She hasn't got the biggest of serves, but I almost think that makes her look better. Every shot she's up against it, every rally she's up against it. But she always seems to come out on top. She had a fantastic French Open. Obviously, that battle with Muguruza was just an incredible match. One of the greatest all-time WTA matches in my opinion. It was just fantastic viewing from ball one. And Halep is such an exciting player to watch. Every time you watch Halep, you're going to get an entertaining match. She leaves everything out on court, and she's a true fighter and a true legend of our sport, I believe. Moving on to a couple of other questions now. Your favourite tennis match ever? This one's from Dom Stewart again on Twitter. Very difficult, but I will have to say the Djokovic and Nadal final at the Australian Open. I think it was 2010. I'm just looking at the canvas I've got of Djokovic celebrating that title win. I think it was 2010 or 11. It's so long ago now. Anyway, the one that went on for 6 hours, and Djokovic won in 5 sets. I believe it was. Did it go to tie break in the end? 7-5. I think it was 7-5 in the 5th. But that was just one of the most incredible matches you'll probably ever see. Even if you go, if the sport lives for 100 years' time, you'll probably still look back at that match as one of the best ever. I mean, your words can't put into describe how good it was, and the momentum shifts. And back then they were both at the absolute peak. 25, 26 they were at the time, and they just produced the most epic match you'll probably ever see. Away from that, you've got to look at the Nadal against Federer, haven't you? When he came on the scene looking like Tarzan lookalike. Who is this kid? Turns up Wimbledon, beating Federer, who'd won 9 or 10 Wimbledon titles, and he dethroned Rafa. So yeah, I'd probably go with them too. But honestly, that Halep and Muguruza match at the French Open was one of the best tennis matches I've ever seen. Every point was just thrilling. It really could have went either way. And I sat at about, I think it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in my bedroom watching that one. I was just amazed by the quality that they produced. It was a quite incredible match. Current favourite players, obviously Djokovic is number one. On the men's side, I like to see Sasha Zverev do well. I think he was under so much pressure in the early part of his career. As I said, it was a case of when's this kid going to be world number one, when's he going to win his first slam, and he just sort of buckled under the pressure. I think he wanted it so much that he tried too much to impress, and he started to change his game, tried to be more aggressive and tried to entertain. But I was so pleased at the Australian Open that he seemed to go back to basics, rallying from the baseline, serving well, doing what he's good at, do what got you on the scene in the first place. And I'll be over the moon when Sasha wins a maiden Grand Slam, if he does. I'm putting pressure on myself now. But Sasha's one of my favourite players. I think Tsitsipas is amazing to watch, such an entertainer, and he's going to be outstanding to watch for years to come. Another player, Borna Coric. I've always liked Coric, I think, from watching him from day one. I think he's the most like Djokovic of the next generation. I just think his all-round game is very solid. He hasn't quite pushed on as I expected that he would a few years ago, but he's still got time on his side. He's only 22. He's still very young. A big run at Grand Slam could really turn Coric's career, I feel. On the WTA side, as I've said, Simona Halep. I was a huge fan of Radwanski before she retired. I think she was epic to watch. But also on Jabeur, I've said about Jabeur for a long time. She wasn't in the top 100 when I started talking about Jabeur, and I said on Twitter at the start of the season that she's one to watch. She's an incredible player. If you watch her, she doesn't play like anybody else. She's got a massive serve, but her backhand slice is arguably the best on tour in my opinion. She's changes up the pace so well. She's so entertaining to watch. Drop shot, she's very quick. She's got huge forehand, single-handed forehand and backhand, and she's just brilliant to watch her burn. She's plucking out results now that I've got into the top 30. If she can improve her all-round game and the consistency, perhaps she hasn't got that consistency yet to make major runs at Grand Slams, but she had a fantastic tournament in Melbourne in January, and she's bounced back from that defeat in the Australian Open to have a very good season so far. And I think Jabeur is somebody that will suit the clay courts, so she'll be very exciting and wanting to watch at the French Open. Away from them two, I'm a big fan of Muguruza. I thought she was brilliant when she first came on the scene all them years back, and I'm pleased that she looks back to her best in Australia, obviously losing that final to Sophia Kenin. And also mention for Emma Raducanu, who most of you probably won't have heard of. She's a young Brit. I think she's 17 now, but I think she's going to be an outstanding player. I've been lucky enough to see her live a couple of times, once in the Fed Cup and once at the Manchester Trophy. She's an outstanding young talent. She works very hard, and I think she'll break through and have a lot of success for GB tennis in the future. And the last question is from Tom, and this was, how does the mentality of tennis compare to other sports, e.g. snooker and football? This is an interesting one, really, and one you could probably talk about for hours and hours. You look at football and like sports like rugby, cricket. Although they are very mentally demanding and you've got to be on top of your game at all times. In football, for example, you've got 10 other teammates. Your mistakes don't get punished. If a striker was to miss 3 or 4 chances, perhaps the other striker would score a hat-trick and they would win 3-0, and them mistakes would never be picked up on. One position, to be fair, is very mentally demanding is goalkeeper in football. If you make 2 or 3 mistakes, they're very likely to result in goals. So there's a lot of pressure on you mentally. And obviously top level of any sport, there's pressure on, these top players, and they're training 5 days a week, they're playing the top matches, Champions League matches, World Cups, and there's always pressure on, if you're at that level, you've got to perform at that level of consistency. But I do feel individual sports are more mentally challenging. You look at snooker, and I think snooker and darts, I'd argue, are probably the two most mentally demanding sports in that exists, really, because if you watch top level snooker, I don't know if anybody in this channel watches top level snooker, but it's often a case of, if the ball's split open, if you miss, your opponent clears up, and then you've lost the frame. There's so little room for error, and I always think that's what is most mentally demanding. If you've got no room for error, and every time you go up the table, there's so much pressure on you to pop balls, then that must be mentally demanding so much. And also, you've got no coaching really in snooker. You can't go in with that tactic. Like, either you go on and you pop balls. Like, it's that simple. Like, it's not. I love watching snooker. I think it's a fantastic sport. Same as darts. But you can't say, I'm playing him, I'm gonna tactically employ this. I'm gonna play defensive. I'm gonna, like you can in tennis. You can say, I'm gonna switch the paces up. I'm gonna target his backhand. I'm gonna target his forehand. You can't do that in snooker. You turn up with the cue. If you have an off day, you lose. If you have a good day and you pop balls, you win. It's simple as that. Same as darts. You throw your darts. If you hit doubles, you win. If you don't, you probably lose. And it's there's no tactics to snooker really. So it's just about turning up and delivering your A game and not missing. And it must be mentally demanding. If you're playing another fantastic player, and the ball split open, I've got to make a big break. I've got to win this frame now, otherwise he will. So yeah, I think they're probably the two most mentally demanding sports, snooker and dart. Tennis, obviously, there's a lot of tournaments, and there's a lot of points. You can have an offset in tennis and then come back and win the next 2 or 3 and still win the match. There's time in tennis to recover. But you could argue. Well, you could fit this question in with the opening one of about in-play coaching. And I just feel like being physically good at this sport, I think is obviously the main part of it, but mentally as well. Like, you've got to have that mental stability and that winning attitude and confidence to get over the line. snooker players, there's been matches where there's been 10-10 and there's been deciding frames of going out on the black ball, and it's all about controlling your emotions and thinking clearly, producing your A game at the biggest stage. Isn't that just like tennis? And I feel if you start introducing in-play coaching where a player can be locked 4-4 and decide and set and have a coach come on and say, right, why don't you do this? I just feel it takes away a bit of the tradition of the sport, really. That's never been seen before in the sport, and we've never lacked for fantastic matches and fantastic players. I don't see why I should start introducing that. As I said at the start, when on that question, if you're not mentally strong enough, that's unlucky. That's credit to the player that he is or she is. And as I say, over time, you look at the likes of Zverev and Tsitsipas. They haven't won Grand Slams yet, but as they get older, more mature, go through experiences of reaching quarterfinals, semi-finals, and playing the greats like Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, they will get better, and it just comes with maturity. They will get there. Like Halep, she took a long time to win a Grand Slam, but she did, and she's won one since. She reached world number one. Let's say Stan Wawrinka's just. Hey, if you ask Stan Wawrinka your opinion on this question, I'm sure he would be all against it, because he's been taught by himself really just to produce his best in finals, how to fight, how to work out opponents, how to problem solve, how to turn matches round. If his opponent all of a sudden gets a massive advantage of not having to do that and letting his coach do that, then that's completely unfair against Stan. He's mentally probably as strong as anybody in the world. Why should that be used against him and allow the other player to have a coach to almost make it a 50-50 mental battle? If Stan goes in that match with a 80-20 mental advantage for his opponent, then well done to Stan. It's part of the sport. So yeah, it's one of them you could probably argue forever. I'd like to know everybody else's opinion on in-play coaching in the WTA, because I think it's a very interesting topic and one that you could talk about forever. But yeah, I've enjoyed doing them questions. If there is any more tennis related questions, then comment below, or like I say, tweet them in. And the YouTube videos are going to be coming more regular again. I've had a lot of job interviews and stuff like that and applications going in the last few weeks. I haven't had time to make many videos, but I will be back to making them soon. I'll be previewing tournaments, and before we know it, the French Open will be around, and I'll be daily reviewing that again. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks to anybody who sent questions in, and I will see you on the next video.